Welcome, everyone. You have joined the Father Show, and I'm your host, Mike Thompson. And I thank you for being a part of our show today. Today, man, we've got a young man that's coming on the show. Now, we know that black men and brown men are incarcerated more than any other race of men, and most of them are fathers. So today on the Father Show, I have the pleasure of having Ali Shakoor. Ali is a post-conviction attorney with over 16 years of experience in criminal law. In college, he majored in political science and minored in women's study and in black studies. He has also volunteered for Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America. So, when we come back, I want you to welcome Ali Shakoor, and we're going to have a great show today, and we're going to be talking about really how black men can navigate through the judicial system and stay out of it, most importantly. So don't go away. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Ali, how are you doing today, man?
Very nice, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you for joining us today. We want to talk about black men being incarcerated in America, and we know that a lot of the black men have been incarcerated, are being incarcerated, and these men are fathers, and their kids are being affected. And you have written a book about it. And before we really dive into what we're going to be talking about, I'd like for you to tell everybody a little bit about your book so that they understand what we're talking about as we go through our discussion.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. This book's about concepts for black men about how to stay out of the criminal justice system. I wrote the book because of my own life experience. Growing up, I grew up in a very politically astute family. My family is very into sociology, black history. My grandfather was a local civil rights leader in Greenwood, Mississippi. He worked with Medgar Evers, and he went to the Emmett Till trial. And his younger brother, David Jordan, is a state senator in Mississippi. Right now, he's been a state senator for many decades now. So my family's always been involved in politics and social justice. And I went through my own personal struggles in my life growing up. I grew up with a single parent most of my life, and I went through some struggles. I made some mistakes, and I came out the other end. So by going to college, putting my nose to the grindstone, learning from my mistakes, taking care of my physical health, my mental health, I wanted me to want to give back. I want to give back to society. I want to give back to the community. Sometimes you hear certain demographics talk about where the so-called leaders trying to reach back and help out their own. But I'm doing my part, and I want to do my part because that's where I was brought up, and that's where I was raised. I want to focus on black men because that's what my expertise is about. I think people should write about what they know. And I'm trying to give back. I'm trying to help black men love their country, and that starts with loving themselves. And by being a strong black man, that's going to help you become a better father, better brother, better husband. And that helps you stay out of the criminal justice system, and you're trying to keep the next generations out of the criminal justice system. So I'm just trying to do my part, and it's all of us all around the country. We're all trying to do our part just to, help in the cause. And the most important thing lately, vote. Got my shirt right here, voting while black. Important election, and black people came out in large numbers. And we had our voices heard. Right now, we're seeing they're trying to push back on that a little bit, and maybe we can talk about politics a little bit later. But I don't want to ramble too much. But that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, politics is definitely, one of those subjects, honestly, I kind of stay away from. I'm not a politician, needless to say, and I don't even particularly care for politicians, even though I know a few. But I think this past election that just went on between Donald Trump and Biden was definitely important, and it was great to see a lot of black people go out and vote. And really, I think for America to really show what they are about in a sense, because to my estimation, I would really think that we were so divided, and people were thinking that's okay. And just for me, it made it nice to see that the world can see that this is not what we are about. Doesn't mean racism isn't here. We all know that isn't true. But as majority, we believe in love and not racism. And I think that was a real important statement that was made by this election. So I'm,
Right.
you know, I have mixed emotions, and I won't get into that. Why I was glad to see it end up the way that it seems to be ending, because it hasn't been,
Right.
I guess,
I hope
finalized.
we're showing the world. Like you mentioned, we're showing the world about love and democracy, and I think we're still in the process of doing that. Things are being slowed up a little bit, but I think it's going to work out. But irrespective of political leanings, it's important for Black men to stay involved in the politics because it affects their lives locally. If there's a local judge who's been discriminatory, or biased in any fashion, or sentencing too harshly, that judge can be up for reelection. You can vote that judge out or that
Mm-hmm.
local prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for Black men to stay very, very politically involved at the local level, particularly, and at the national.
Now let me ask you something. So you've been in the criminal system for over 16 years.
Yes, sir.
Why doesn't that happen? We know there are judges up there that are biased, and why aren't they voted out?
You know what? There's a lot of reasons for that. On our end, a lot of political apathy, trying to get Black men and Black people in general, or people who care about bias, not just Black people, but anybody who cares about getting a biased judge off the bench, getting them involved and letting them know that their votes can make a difference. So that takes activism.
Mm-hmm.
As far as people keeping that judge in, people that want to keep a racist judge in power, people that want to support and promote white supremacy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what that comes down to. If they know what that judge is doing based on the statistics, and they want to keep that judge in power, there's a reason for that. But a judge can always be voted out. A president can be voted out. You
Yeah. But I really don't think that a lot is said about or put out there about that particular judge, to say what is his record, he or she, what their record is. And so when you go to vote, you really don't know. You haven't, you haven't really got the full information that you need to make an intelligent decision.
You're right. And even myself, I'm very politically involved, but I find myself like in the days before the election doing my own research on some of these judges because I just don't know them.
Yeah.
Some of these political issues, I don't know them, but we have to be actively involved with getting people knowing about these biases and these decisions. So there needs to be a movement where we can like look at the newspaper clippings about a sentence, and this takes reporting, this takes investigative reporting.
Mm-hmm.
People like to put down the media and talk trash about the media, but the media exposes a lot of corruption and racism too.
True.
So I guess to get a racist or biased judge off the bench, if an injustice happens, then it needs to be talked about. Then we need to get the media to know about it, to get it reported. And then next time that election comes, we got to have some money so that they can run election ads about, hey, this is the judge that knows, that doesn't believe lives matter. Certain people's lives
Yeah.
matter. That takes activism.
Because you would think the opponent would make those statements and bring that out, and so that it can be in clear view.
They'd have to know about it. And sometimes the opponent doesn't want to rock the boat. Sometimes, like, whether we're talking about judges or especially local politics, rock the boats because they still want to work in that community. They might want to run for office again. They might share some friends. So
Mm-hmm.
they might want they might not want to go too they might not want to go too far and say this judge has a clear history of being biased against black people or Hispanics or Muslim or anybody. They don't want to point that out because it might offend their local friendship culture, maybe, and that's a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, yeah. I agree, and I know I would like to see more of that information brought out. I know the media, they get a little bias as well, so you can't always count on them. Not unless it's going to sell or bring in, commercial ads where they can make money off of. But other than that, they're not going to really put it out there. So and I think in my mind, and I know, we're talking about fathers, but this affect fathers. And I think that they should take a person political aspiration out of the judicial system, because I know that they are, attorneys that are trying to be judges and judges that are trying to be senates and so forth. They want to climb up the political ladder. And for order for them to do that, they're looking at their win ratio and how many convictions they've gotten.
Right.
That shouldn't play a part, in my opinion. It really shouldn't play a part in, because you're playing with another person's life that may or may not have done something. And if they didn't, it's really should, and an attorney knows that they didn't, because sometimes they do. And I know your attorney, you've been in the criminal law. I think sometimes they do know that evidence doesn't support what they're charging that person with. But they yet and still, just to get that conviction, they do almost whatever. And I know that's not all attorneys. Trust me, because I got good friends that are attorneys as well. But I do know that plays a part. And I
It does
think
play
that
a
should
part.
be taken off the table.
It should be. I mean, it could be relevant to a certain point. I mean, a community wants to feel safe. So it's important for a community to want to vote for a judge or a prosecutor that's going to be hold criminals accountable to a certain extent. But we don't want somebody that has a chance at redemption to be put away and taken away from their families, taken away from having a livelihood, contributing to a society, to a free society. I mean, that's a problem. So we can also encourage promotion of judges who are giving chances to people who deserve it. Giving chances to people who have shown that they can reenter society and contribute in a positive way,
Yeah,
in a non-violent way, in a
yeah,
non-oppressive way.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely. So why the focus on black men opposed to women and other racial ethnicities in
because
this book?
again, I think people should focus on what they know. I mean, I like to write. I'm an opinionated person, but I want to give back to my community. I want to give back to my family, my family history. I feel like
Hmm.
I have a certain obligation to want to help our race.
Hmm.
I know what it's like to be a black boy growing up,
Yeah.
and I think by talking about it from a perspective, I don't have any children myself. I have a niece and nephew that I adore. I've had romantic partners who have children, but I don't have any children of my own. But
Hmm.
I I fight for children every day. I believe in protecting children. So
Yeah.
I also want to write a book that lets fathers know that it's important to be a positive influence in your child's life. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Mothers too, but a daughter could write that book better as far as what a mother should do as far as a woman's.
Well, I really believe that it's the son and the daughter, because men, you're going to be important to the son to teach him how to be a man. But with the daughter, you're going to be teaching her how a man should be treating her and what she should expect out of a man. So both of them, both children need their father and need their example as well as the mother, because it goes the same way. A mother's going to show a young lady how she should treat her man, how she should act, how she should dress, and going to also teach her son, this is what a woman is, and this is how she should treat you. So both parents play a strong part and a significant part in these kids' lives.
Oh, I completely agree with that. And I also want to just make a point where I think a male role model grew up with a single mother, and
Yeah.
she was a great, powerful, strong, great woman, but she made some mistakes, and one of her mistakes was my stepfather. He
Mm-hmm.
was evil,
Mm-hmm.
and we were better off without him, And I had other male role models in my life. I had my grandfather until he passed away. So I think it's important to have a male role model, to your point, mother for a daughter and or a son, because it's important to have that dynamic. Because as you grow up, you're going to be dealing with the masculine and the feminine.
Yeah.
But I think like some women are raising children alone, like I talked about.
Yeah.
Some women are raising women with other women, and that's fine. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure they have an uncle that's a male role model, or a grandfather, or a male friend. It's important to have that input, from both sides.
Yeah.
Two men who has a influence on that child's life to some extent,
Yeah.
and a positive impact. And I think it's very important for a man who has children to be there for their child, and to be the best man they can be. So
Mm-hmm.
I also wrote a book about how that starts with themselves.
Yeah.
You know, talk starts with your personal physical health, your personal mental health. Because the
Mm-hmm.
best person you can be for yourself and loving yourself, you can be a better parent to your child.
Yeah.
'Cause
Now,
hurt people. Like fathers who have been abusive, they went through horrible things themselves. It's not an
mm-hmm.
excuse. It's an
True.
explanation. You
True.
know.
Because sometimes it's a learned behavior in some
Yeah.
cases.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, what are some systemic traps for black men in the criminal system?
Ooh, good question. Systemic substance abuse. You
Okay.
know, white people use drugs at the same rate as black people, but
Mm-hmm.
white people don't have that police presence in their community, and they don't have that the local government disinvesting from the community. They're getting the opposite. They're getting the tax benefits because they're getting the high profile people in office through their votes.
Yeah.
So it's important for black men to be careful about substance abuse, because if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can get hemmed up in the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Other systemic traps would be um, uh, be careful about where you are and when. Even irrespective of substance abuse. I mean, you got to keep your head on the swivel. I mean, Jim Crow is not that long ago, and
Right.
there are places now a black man cannot be safe. We just saw what happened to that young brother in Georgia earlier this summer. His
Yeah.
name is Arbery, I believe. I don't want to mispronounce his name. That's in 2020. The white
Mm-hmm.
man tracked that man down. So that could be a systemic trap if it would have went another way. If he would have defended himself, if he would have stood his ground and shot one of those white men, he probably would have been in the criminal justice system. So
Oh,
just be careful.
absolutely.
Just be careful about where you are. We should be free to be wherever we want to be, whenever we want to be,
Mm-hmm.
but be aware of your surroundings, be aware of the country you live in, and be aware that we're just one generation past Jim Crow, and a lot of that stuff is still around.
Yeah. Now, in your book summary, you said you are sharing with black men how to study, understand, navigate through the white oppression. What are ways that they can do that?
Doing healthy things, that also starts with like what you consume on the internet. I mean, I talk about white oppression, but I got white people in my life that I love, that are like family to me. I'm a humanist that starts with more than anything else. So I think also navigating through the system, besides the things I talked about, like about white supremacy, white oppression, being about careful where you are, stay off of negative things on the internet that steer you in a direction where you're being anti-white or anti-woman, because it's toxic, it's oppressive. And the more you consume toxic things, the more you are likely to do negative things that can hurt other people and get yourself involved in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and I know I've even told my kids the same, that you need to stay away from negativity. I don't care who's bringing it. So it could be a brother, a sister, your mom, your dad. I really don't care. But if somebody is bringing negativity into your world, into your life, you need to stay away from that person. Doesn't mean you have to push them out, but you definitely need to limit the amount of time that you spend with them and spend more time on looking at positivity things and things that are going to keep lifting you up and not listening to people that are going to tear you down.
Right. Exactly. Or tear other people down.
Yeah.
You might think if it makes you feel good to hear other cultures, other people torn down, then that's something wrong with you. And
Yeah.
ultimately, that's going to put you in a bad spot. And that goes to your point, positivity.
Yeah.
Consume like, and we all want to, we're going to have like our taste in music and our movies. I'm sure we all love our mafia movies. I don't apologize for my love for hip hop, but it's in a certain perspective. I mean, you're escaping into a certain unreality for a little while because it's an art form, but ultimately you need to consume positive things more
Yeah.
so than not. Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you're surrounded or you get, you know, inundated with negativity, you have to do twice or three times as much on the positive side so that you don't sink down to that level and
Right.
start living in a negative world.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, could this book be used not just for black men, but any other race of men?
Absolutely. Because some things are just human, like taking care of your health,
Hmm.
being self-aware, treating women the right way, you know, being politically active. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm proud to be black. I mean, I'm speaking from a black perspective. If somebody was Italian American, I'm sure they're proud of their culture. I mean,
Yeah.
people have sometimes people have issues and they get frightened off about like black power and like we came over here on slave ships. We got separated from different countries. Our families got ripped apart. We created a Black American experience, and I love it. And I wrote about it, and I revel in it. I mean, I love Black American experience. Just like somebody who's German American has their Oktoberfest, and
Yeah.
they love the German culture. That's beautiful too. So
Yeah.
anybody that loves America and loves their culture, I mean, and wants to stay out of the criminal justice system in any way, they'd appreciate it.
Yeah, because I mean, once you get in there, I mean, especially for a man and being a black man, once you get in it, I mean, it's really hard to get a job and it's really hard to get into a positive way. It doesn't mean it can't happen. It's just this the stakes are stacked against you and you got to peel them away one by one, but it can be done. But is there any other suggestions that you would have for black men to stay out of the system?
Focus on your education, maximize your education. I mean, I went to law school. That's the route I decided to take, because that's how my mind works. And I don't have the mind that where I could like fix a car. I can't do that. But if you're a mechanic, be the best mechanic you can be. Maximize your skill level and educational, intellectual level with that.
Hmm.
Because besides being socially aware and politically aware, you got to. I mean, I think Christians say something about the devil's hands or um,
Yeah.
hands that are not busy. I don't want to misquote it, but
Yeah.
to my point, you got to have something to do. You got to have something that you care about. I mean, I love my job, and that gives me like some sense of passion. So whatever it is, you got to find something that you care about, and you got to pick a career path. And I think that starts with like my grandmother, my sweet grandmother, who's motivated me into getting into the law. If she was 10 years younger, she'd be a lawyer herself. She didn't have those opportunities. Being a black woman from the opportunities that she was able to provide for me and my generation,
Yeah.
and our subsequent generations in our family. But she and my grandfather laid the footwork or the groundwork for that. But she always talks about maximizing your education.
Hmm.
And she went back in her 70s and got her college degree.
Wow.
She led by example. Yes. Yep.
That's
Because
excellent.
She didn't finish school. She had five daughters. She took part in the Great Migration, moved from Mississippi to Toledo, Ohio, with my grandfather. That's how my mother wound up in Ohio.
Okay.
And that's how I went to Ohio, through the Great Migration. We went from Mississippi to Ohio. So she always talked about maximizing your education. So she got her GED later in life, and she wound up getting her college degree in her 70s.
Hmm.
So she was a little bit
That's
younger. She would have
excellent.
been a lawyer.
Ah,
Yes,
well, I applaud her. That's excellent.
yes, sir. Thank
Now,
you.
is this a book that mothers can use to educate their son and, you know, also really educating their daughter? Because we all know that women and it doesn't matter. We know that your sister system is hard on black men, but they not that keen on black women either.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is a very good book for mothers to get for their sons because it teaches their sons how to treat women. I talk about patriarchy. I talk about racism, but I also talk about patriarchy. I
Mm-hmm.
also talk about how there's systemic traps for women in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And we see what women can do when given the opportunity. Where we're talking about elections or we're talking about helping men get into outer space.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think I think mothers reading this book can understand maybe how boys and men think, and seeing how I've come out the other end and seeing my feminist perspective. I think it can also help them, teach their sons how to treat women or
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
understand how to treat women by
Yeah.
being better men themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, Ali, that's gonna be really our time for the day. But before we go, I'd definitely like for you to tell everybody how they can get their hands on this book.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for having me on the talk tonight. You can see my book online by just typing in the title, or just going to Amazon, typing in the title on Amazon, and you'll find it. I think you'll find some very interesting topics in there and concepts about how to stay out of the criminal justice system. And I intertwine my own story. There's a lot of personal memoir in there. I intertwine my own personal story, which is an American story, about how to get out through the criminal justice. I'm sorry, how to navigate away from the criminal justice system and how to survive and thrive in America. So just you can find my book on Amazon.com, and I'm on Twitter. I don't have any type of following. I'm not famous, but I'm on Twitter at Shakoor74, and I'm mostly tweeting about politics, Ohio State football, boxing. And if you're a boxing fan, I've written some boxing articles on 3morerounds.com. But I'm also,
Yeah.
thank you for the time.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I love the boxing world, but I'll be honest. Ever since Mike Tyson stopped fighting, I kind of haven't watched it that much anymore. But I love boxing, and I enjoy watching it, and I wish I could watch it more, but I've really just been a little too busy. But I'm glad you wrote this book, and I really hope that our audience will spread this around and go out and buy the book, because if we can keep just one more kid, and neither say when I say one, I'm talking about 1,000. We can keep kids out of the judicial system from the get go. We know sometimes they start young, and then they start on a bad path, and some of them change at 18, some of them do not. But if we can lower the amount of black men that are going to prison, and a lot of time for stupid things,
Yeah.
it's going to be great. So thank you so much
Once you
for writing the book. No,
Thank you,
go
sir.
ahead.
Because once you get that felony stigma, it's hard to get a job, as you know, but it's hard to
Yeah.
find a place to rent.
Yeah.
It's hard to get credit, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's purposeful.
Right.
it's part of racism. It's part of the systemic traps. But you want to stay out of the system so you can avoid that felony. And if you get that felony, there's ways to try to get rid of it. We don't probably have time to talk about that today, but there's ways to get your rights restored. I'm also doing work here in Florida as far as helping returning citizens get their voting rights back. get their
Yeah.
right to vote back. Some do not work through the League of Women Voters.
And I think that would be important for, I mean, you have served your time, you have paid your debt to society. Why can't you come back into society and be able to vote and live and all that? And, on the Father Show Resource Program page, we have tried to put on there jobs that will hire felons because we do know and we understand how hard it is. But to have you to sit there and tell them how to stay out of it so you don't have to worry about that and you don't have to go through that, that's going to be key. So I want everybody out there to pay attention to this book and go out there and buy it and get it to your son. Make that a curriculum that he needs to read.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Ali, thank you so much for being on the show. It definitely has been a pleasure. And, we probably have to come back on and talk about how you can correct if you have gone into the system and you have a felony now against your name, how you can correct that and how you can overcome that.
Love to. Absolutely.
Okay. So we'll talk about that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show for today. And I really thank you for joining us. And I really hope you got something out of it because we do know that a lot of black men have been incarcerated. And we do know a lot of black men has that felony up against their name. And once they have that, what's already hard is a heck of a lot more harder now. So we want to make sure that you can stay out of the system, get you and have a productive life. So do that. Buy the book, go get it and share it with your friends and let them know. But that's our show for today. And I want to thank you for joining us. If you need resources to help you with to be the best man that you can be, go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com, click on resources, and then the state that you live in. And we have a list of resources. We're adding some all the time. So if it's not one there for you that you're looking for, you can email me right there on the Father Show at gmail.com and let me know that you're looking for something. And I'd be more than happy to do whatever I can to get it. Now, you can watch this and other episodes by going to our website and on our YouTube page as well, The Father Show with Mike Thompson. While there, don't forget, hit that subscribe button and make sure that you always get notifications when we have our next show, which is weekly. So don't forget. Now, you can watch this episode and you can listen to our episodes on Facebook, LinkedIn, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Twitter, Tumblr, Amazon, and Music Audible apps. And you can listen to it while you're working out, while you're driving to work, or driving home from work. So until the next week, thank you again for joining us, and God bless.